What is your relationship with time? Are you wired and tired, stressed and overwhelmed, busy and going nowhere? Or just want to scale your business? Welcome to Take Back Time with your host, Penny Zenker. Penny focuses on books, strategies, tools, and tips to help you work smarter and approach your time more strategically. As a result, you can have more energy, focus, and get more done in less time. Be more efficient and effective. Get ready to take back time.
Hello and welcome to Take Back Time. My name is Penny Zenker and I'm your host. And today I've got Mike Vardy. Apparently this guy is funny, so we're going to check in on that. Mike is a writer. He's a productivity strategist and he's founder of the Productivityist. And he'll explain more about that. He served as the managing editor at Lifehack and contributed articles on productivity to various different platforms like Success Magazine, NextWeb, Lifehacker, and the Huffington Post, and many more. Mike is also the author of several books, including The Front Nine, How to Start the Year That You Want, Anytime That You Want. And he's the host of a popular podcast, the Productivityist podcast, which has over 3 million downloads since it began running in August 2014. And so without further ado, let's let Mike tell you the rest about Mike. Mike, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Penny. Really appreciate you having me on.
It's my pleasure. I love talking to like-minded geeks, talking about how to make things better, how to help people to be more efficient and effective, and ultimately, I believe, happier and add more meaning in their life.
Absolutely. I'm a big believer in time management and productivity are really about the marriage of intention and attention. I think that speed and all that stuff comes later. I'm sure we'll get into that as we go, but it's a beautiful day here. I'm sitting in my chair enjoying my coffee, and I'm looking forward to digging in with you.
Awesome. You mentioned something beforehand as we were chatting, and I have to just ask you about that. You said that you used to be a comedian. Does that mean that you're not so funny, that you're not a comedian anymore? Or?
One would argue that I was never really one in the first place. I think my wife would definitely say that I shouldn't have quit my day job. And so I started a new one. No, I left my job at Costco. I worked for Costco for over a decade. And when I was working at Costco, I started to get into improv and sketch comedy, which is something that I did back when I was in high school. And then I started to even branch out to stand-up, which is a whole other animal. So I did that for a while, but living in Victoria, British Columbia, the comedy scene is not too ripe here. It's a capital city, but it's a capital city in Canada, so it's not huge. And so I would go.
They have a sense of humor there, right?
Yeah, they do. Oh, yeah. But the funny thing is that Canadians generally are pretty reserved when it comes to like they'll laugh and they'll appreciate, but they'll sit and appreciate. Like there's a lot of British elements to it. So the response you would get is it varied. And there would be instances where you thought a joke would land and they're like, oh, and then later they go, oh, that was great. And you're like, well, why didn't you laugh and applaud at the time?
Laughed on the inside.
Right. But when our comedy would be invited to sketch conferences, we went to Washington, D.C. and did DC Comedy Fest there. And then we did this, we used to do a sketch about the TV show 24, like the initial iteration of it. And we called it 2 minutes, 40 seconds. So we did the entire first season of 24 in 2 minutes and 40 seconds with just two of us. Like we would, that frenetic pace. And with comedy, when you're creating content, it's a lot of hit and miss, right? Like if you ever watch Saturday Night Live, there's some jokes, sketches that are like, oh, that was so good. And then there's others like, okay, move along. This one shouldn't have. So I did that for a while. And then ultimately you have to pay the mortgage. And so I had my other job at Costco. I went down to part-time and I was working at the front door at that point. I was a manager for a long time at Costco and kind of moved my way down so I could focus on my creative work. And then ultimately I started to try to figure out how I can balance like this comedy thing I wanted to do, plus the Costco job that was paying the bills, plus now I was married. So at this point, I've got a wife and we're working on having a family. So how do I balance all this stuff? And so I started to study productivity, like particularly the work of like Stephen Covey and David Allen and even Tony Robbins' Time of Your Life. And as someone who had a comedic background and a creative, I started to dig into that like almost wholeheartedly to the point where that was where I was almost obsessive about it. And then it clicked one day when I was watching the Colbert Report. And I thought, like, there's so much productivity stuff out there to the point where it was being called productivity porn. Like, there was just so much of how to be more productive. And people were spending so much time learning how to be more productive that they weren't actually being more productive. And I thought, what if I did to productivity what Colbert did to politics, right? Like play this nut bar kind of pundit what if I did that? And I started to do that. So I created a website and a personality. It was just my name, like Colbert did with his. And it was Mike Vardy, eventual productivity expert. So my thing was called eventualism. And it was about doing things eventually, getting things done eventually. And
the procrastinator, is that what you mean?
exactly. Like it was like procrastinate. Well, I'd say, procrastinating is it's really crastinating. And crastinating is like just delaying. And I was a pro at crastinating. So really, is that a bad thing? Like I'm a professional at delaying, which is always a good thing. Like, so I would try to spin it that way. And then I eventually just kind of wrote a blog about it. And then I had a podcast. Like I was podcasting in the early days of podcasting when people definitely didn't know what it was. And yeah. So I would have like Seth Godin on the show, and I would do like the kind of thing that Colbert would do, where he would interview like someone and they would be the straight person and he would be like the comedian. And I interviewed David Allen, who wrote Getting Things Done. And he's kind of like highly regarded, and a lot of people that do what we do. Yeah.
Guru in this marketplace, right? Getting things done.
Exactly. And so I ended up chatting with him. And then after the fact, he said, you really know your stuff here. And I said, well, to satirize, you kind of have to know it, right? You can't parody something that you don't know. Right. And his people then said, we'd like you to write for the GTD Times, which was their blog. And I said, sure. And they said, but you need to like be legitimate. Like you can't like be entertaining and informative all at the same time, but don't be this like buffoon. I'm like, yeah, sure, I can do it. And that began the journey to doing what I'm doing now, which is basically becoming the very thing that I was parodying. And now I am an actual productivity. Initially, it was a productivity enthusiast because I was really into it. Then I was a productivity kind of specialist because I knew about all these different tools and I was able to kind of help people use them. But now I've got my own methodology that I teach called time crafting. And now I'm more of a productivity strategist. And even maybe to the point where maybe a productivity philosopher to a certain degree, I think. And that's kind of where I'm at now. I run my site called Productivityist and several books. I do workshops and talks, and I have a podcast that's no longer this comedy type. I've done several over the years, but now the Productivityist podcast we get, like you said in the bio, over 3 million downloads since we started in mid to late 2014. And I finally was able to take my love of entertainment, because I do love speaking and I do love doing this kind of thing, talking with you and things like that, but I was able to apply it in a way that was able to actually earn a living and call my own shots, which is not something that you get to do very often.
Yeah, well, that's great. So tell us more about time crafting. Now that you've given us sort of the history of how you moved into the different stages, what's time crafting about?
So time crafting is basically the culmination of studying a whole bunch of different productivity philosophies and methodologies over the years, and then kind of figuring out what would really work in my real life. And then working with tons of clients over the years, like hundreds of them, figuring out what worked for them and kind of combining it all. So, and actually a dash of Costco in there as well, because again, working for Costco for 10 years, you learn how a successful business operates. And Costco's kind of philosophy, it's not really spoken, it's kind of an unspoken one, but they're built on like simplicity, flexibility, and durability. If you ever go into a Costco, you know that you're going to see pallets and steel, and prices are printed on dot matrix printers, and they don't have a lot of stock, but they have the right stock. And they don't really, you end up going in there to buy like 3 things and you end up buying 20 because they've eliminated decision fatigue because they only carry a certain amount of things. So that kind of thing kind of informed time crafting. And what it is, it's basically the idea of simplifying your calendar and your to-do list in a way that allows you to kind of craft your days, craft your weeks, craft your months. So some of the elements include, like, I'm a big believer in theming your time. So for example, as we're recording this on a Wednesday is what I call my listening day. Like my overarching focus on Wednesday is to listen. So whether that's listening to podcasts, whether that's creating something for people to listen to, whether it's sitting, having a coffee with a friend so that I can have some really good listening time with them. And again, that's kind of my personal theme for that day. I've taught others to pick something that's maybe a little bit more focused for them because of their situation. But what that does is, instead of me going through my day and going, what do I do next? Instead, I have a really clear answer. What do I do next? Well, hold on. What day is it? Oh, it's Wednesday. Well, what's my focus today? Well, my focus today is listening. Okay, let me look at all the tasks that I've listed in my to-do list that are oriented or aligned with listening. And all of a sudden, instead of seeing 360 tasks, that is my entire to-do list, I now see maybe 23.
Right. It helps you to really narrow down and focus. I mean, a lot of salespeople that I've interacted with, we work in that way, is where we might have certain days that are follow-up days, like Thursdays is a great follow-up day. Never follow up on Friday because nobody wants to hear from you. that's a great day to do your planning and so forth. So I think it's really important that people make it easier for themselves with themes like that and topics of focus and structure, right? It's the structure that we can add to our days and our planning that help make it, like you said, decision fatigue. It helps to make it easier so we don't have as many things to choose from.
Right. And the thing is, frameworks foster freedom. Like if you put a framework in place, it gives you the ability to make some clear choices because you know what you're working with, right? And so, like, you brought a really good example of the calling. Like, on Friday is a terrible day to do follow-ups because half the people they're either done with their week and they don't want to hear from you, or they're maybe not in the office, or they've booked out early because vacation time, or it's sometimes a holiday on Friday. So when you're theming your days, and when I work with clients, it's about working backwards from your certainties. So if like I know, for example, on Wednesday, nobody is home at the house. My wife is working she's an acupuncturist, so she works all day on Wednesdays outside of the house. The kids aren't home. There's very few school holidays on a Wednesday. So I'm like, well, it makes more sense to do these kind of things on a Wednesday than on a Monday when the kids could be out of school and my wife's home, or on a weekend or anything like that. So it's about saying, okay, what do I know to be true? Or what do I believe to be true? And then framing those themes around that. And then the other thing that I try to help people with in this case, themes are just one element. There's also what I call mode-based work, which is, okay, so now it's Wednesday, it's listening day, but I'm a night owl. So when I wake up Wednesday morning, I know it's listening day, but I'm not really ready to do this kind of thing that I'm doing with you. Instead, I'm kind of like, okay, let's kind of then I'm looking at, okay, well, what mode am I in right now? Oh, I'm in low energy mode. Okay, so let me look at all the tasks that are listening, but that also are low energy. So now I've gone from 36 down to 4. So it's about, like you said, narrowing your focus. And when you work by modality instead of by, say, project, which sometimes we have to do, there's no question, it allows you to get in that state of flow where it's like, okay, let me do all the low energy tasks now, or let me do all the phone calls now, or let me do all the listening oriented stuff now, so that later when I want to work by project, I can kind of do that because I've gotten through that kind of stuff. So it's about kind of operating like a human being actually would normally operate, because that's how our brains work, as opposed to how, let's say, a machine would, or a robot would, where it's like, okay, go do this, do this, do this. They're able to switch a lot faster than, say, the human mind can, because we love to be in that state of flow, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It makes a lot of sense. Is take a look at, as opposed to fighting the current, so to speak, right? If you're in a low energy mode, then just accept it and work on things that are low energy.
Right. And when you start to do that, then you're going to be ready. So let's say you're me and you're a night owl. By the time you are ready to do those high energy tasks, you've not spent your energy on bigger tasks when you weren't really at your best. So you're actually, again, crafting your time in a way that makes sense for you. And again, the interesting thing is that productivity is very subjective and it's very personal. I don't care whether you're in a business environment or a personal environment, like home, it's personal. And if you can find a way to allow yourself to personalize your productivity in your workspace. So if you work for a large corporation, even a small corporation, you can find a way more often than not to do that in a way that's almost invisible. And I think that happens a lot. Like you can almost do it. We're like, wow, I can't believe Mike got all of his phone calls done. How did you do that? Well, I structured this part of the day to be phone calls. And I also do what are called horizontal themes, which are, if you can't theme a day or you need extra focus, then you could say, okay, I need to make phone calls every day. Okay, so between 9 and 10, I'm going to make phone calls, or I'm going to make this my communication time, because what if I run out of phone calls? Then I don't have a question about what I will do next, because what I will do next is jump into email and have email tell me what to do, or I'll go onto Facebook or get pulled in different directions. Instead, I'll say, okay, from 9 to 10 is communication. Phone falls into communication. Email falls into communication. Oh, it's 10 o'clock. I'm now done this. Okay, what do I do now? Wait, it's Wednesday. Wednesday's listening day. Okay, great. Let's get back to the listening stuff. So it's about just creating these easier paths to follow.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's a way to look at things. And I think your method is, like you said, it's like theming low energy. And I always talk about know which energy you're in at which part of the day and plan the tasks. But yours is also notice where you are, not just plan, because that can change from day to day. And you might have planned a high energy activity or different type of theme. So, I really like that, is getting people to think about the way that they actually function in their day and work around that and understanding.
Well, yeah. And the other thing is those are kind of qualitative, right? Like energy is more of a qualitative thing. It kind of ebbs and flows. But I've had other clients that are a bit more, they really want to see like numerical or quantitative results. So I'll say, okay, well, how long will it take you to do these kind of tasks? So they'll use time-based. So instead of grouping their tasks by energy, they'll say, how many tasks do I have that will take me 5 minutes or less? How many tasks do I have that will take me 15 minutes? How many of these will take me 30 minutes? So what they'll do is, let's say their calendar is meeting heavy, like they meet a lot of people. Instead of that half-hour block between meetings where they'll go check email, which is what the default is for a lot of people, they'll say, okay, hold on a second. I've got 30 minutes between these two meetings. Let me take a look at my list and see how many 5-minute tasks I have on my plate. Oh, there's 23 of them. It's 30 minutes. Okay, can I get 6 of these done before I go to my next meeting? So it's a focus filter. It's filtering your focus. So like my mantra is kind of define your day, filter your focus. And by doing that, you'll make every moment matter.
Distractions are the enemy of productivity. Go to distractionquiz.com and find out your distraction profile. Are you a time zombie or a hamster? Take this free distraction quiz today to rate your ability to focus on what keeps you from being a wizard. Go to distractionquiz.com.
So let's talk a little bit about getting the balance between urgency and importance, because you could have, those 5-minute things. Maybe you've got 23 5-minute tasks, but the fact is that they're really not that important. What I find in talking to people is that they get stuck doing all those 5-minute tasks and all the things that are kind of urgent, and they don't really get the time for those things that are important, that are strategic for them, that's going to move them forward on like important goals, but maybe it's not really important today. And so it gets pushed off and pushed off and pushed off. So how do you address those types of issue in your model?
Well, theming definitely helps with that because, for example, I know that I need to produce podcasts every single week. So by having a listening day, that kind of places an entire day's focus or overarching focus on that. Same thing with my Tuesdays, which are my looking days, which are generally video oriented, right? So theming helps with that because what you can do, and I like to call this like the Goldilocks factor. When you pick a theme, you don't want it to be too hard, which means like it's too narrow so that you run out of things to do. You don't want it to be too soft, which means like you don't want to call it home mode necessarily or desk mode or office mode, because those could be too wide. And then you've got too many things. So you want like that just right. So for example, if you've got important things to do, you could actually have a mode called important mode, right? That you block off during, and like you said, that time of day where you kind of know when you're at your best, right? So you can make that like a consistent horizontal theme that says, hey, between, 9 and 11, I'd like to be in important mode. And then you tag those tasks accordingly. Hey, these are all my important things. Then remember, the calendar is kind of like the guidelines for the day, but the to-do list are the details of the day. So if you say like, this is important mode, then the calendar triggers you. And I call this like your CT scan, calendar, then to-do list scan. You look at your calendar and you go, oh, it's important mode time. Let me look at all the tasks I've tagged as important. Oh, here they all are. Let's dig into those. And by doing that up front, you're kind of trusting the person, and you should be, the person that set that up in the first place to you in the moment, who might be dealing with too many emotions when it comes to your to-do list. Because I think that happens too, is we're either too logical, which doesn't totally work either. Like, yep, today is Wednesday. I must do all listening tasks. Oh no, like for example, my daughter's sick today. I may not be doing a lot of audio recording because she could be coughing in the next room. It would not be logical for me to dive deeply into that, nor to go into the room and say, hey, stop coughing. Like, it's not something that I can logistically do. But sometimes we get too emotional where it's like, oh my God, the day's getting away from me. And you just kind of are willy-nilly and scattering all over the place. But when you have these things, it gives you like a reasonable approach. Hey, it's my important mode time. Let me take a look at all the tasks I've tagged as important, which I've done leading up to this moment. So now that I'm in this moment, I'm not going to be swayed too much by the emotional impact of the day necessarily, or try to get overly logical. I'm going to be fairly reasonable. So that's one way that I would do it. And the other way, of course, is like I said, is when you're theming your days. When I work with people on this, not only do I say work backwards from your certainties, but I also say, like, what are the core elements of your, not just your work, but your home life as well? Because you want those to kind of envelop both. Like when I'm done today, my day job, when I'm done here, my day is still listening. My overarching theme for the day is still listening. So I will be doing things like sit down with my son and listen to how his day went. I will listen to an audiobook. So you try to make them so that when you go home, your mindset doesn't have to change too drastically, but it's not like you're going to necessarily go in and dig deep in your to-do list either. You just want to have that, look, what day is it? Oh, it's Wednesday. Okay, well, let's listen to this Audible book that I haven't listened to, or let's listen to my wife or my partner listen to what she has going on or whatever. So I think that it just creates really simple and durable kind of boundaries and waypoints for you to look at. And then if you've got like this urgent stuff, which you mentioned as well, like those kind of things, you could set aside time for hey, first thing in the morning, I want to deal with that, or before the end of the day. I've actually had people on Fridays, you mentioned like it's a terrible day to interact with people.
Right.
I've had some clients that call that their triage day. So they label all of these urgent tasks with the tag triage, or they star them or whatever that means to them. And then they basically just drill through those. And the great thing about that is for some of them, they get them done by 2:00 and they're like, okay, great, I'm done for the day. And that's it. Now they can shift focus back to maybe a horizontal theme they have there, or they can just call it a day. But I think it's, again, having real, like almost like these breadcrumbs, more pebbles than breadcrumbs, because we know what happened to breadcrumbs in that story, but more like these anchors that you can look to so that you give your brain a break and your brain's not struggling to try to remember or kind of analyze. Instead, it can just focus on executing and using its real power for like that deep kind of work and that critical thinking that only you can do.
That's awesome. I really love that. And you've really provided some great nuggets today, and bringing it back to what you said around Costco, which is those frameworks and using a system like this, or really a lot of systems provide that structure and that framework that give you that simplicity, like you said, the flexibility, and then the durability. So there you are, back to Costco, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And the other thing that I think that is a missing and undervalued piece, it's actually funny because I have this on my daily progress planning sheets that I offer at my website, is the celebration component of the day. You can capture all the tasks, you can connect with them, and then you can curate them. But the one thing we don't do is necessarily like journal or chronicle like how the day went. All we have is a record of was in our to-do list, which is really just like a bunch of check boxes largely, or the calendar, which says, hey, I went to the doctor today, but you don't say how you felt when you went to the doctor. So like having that moment of and there's a reason that there's a tool out there called the 5-minute journal. It takes 5 minutes. It could take even less. James Clear was on my podcast recently, like not too long ago, and he said he was struggling with journaling and all he does is a 1-sentence journal. And the question could be for you, if you want to start this, is what was today's theme? Oh, it was listening. Okay, did I do a lot of listening? Yes or no? Like, it doesn't have to be an essay. It doesn't have to be, here's a report of what I did. It just has to be something that you can look back to later or feel like you're closing out your day. So that way there's this form of celebration and acknowledgement that the day is come to an end. Here's what happened. And then you can move forward with tomorrow. So I think the benefits of that towards your productivity and how like the kind of impact it can have is often not totally understood in today's day and age. It was definitely understood. You've got guys like Ben Franklin and, people and you hear people that journal today that their success levels are largely touted because they're like, hey, I'm able to like sit down and figure out what went wrong, what went right, and then move forward. So I think another takeaway I'd love for your audience to have is if you're not journaling in some way, shape, or form already, take anywhere from 2 to 5 minutes to do it at the end of the day or even at the start of the day so that you can have some context and some understanding of how the day is the shape of your day. So that way you can make sure that you're crafting your future days in a way that really works for you.
Absolutely. Celebrating wins was actually a huge breakthrough for me because I'm one of those people, I love action, move, move, move. And instead of appreciating what I did do, I was so focused on what I didn't do and what still had to be done. And it kind of leaves you flat at the end of the day or at the end of the week. And so it was a huge boost for me emotionally at the end of every day to just tally some of the wins, because some of the wins aren't even on the to-do list, right? Mm-hmm. It's just things that happen that you want to take stock of and to recognize. And you said to take it a step back and review what worked and what didn't work. You can't adapt if you're not clear on what's working and what's not working. So I can really attest to that as well, as that was a really big thing for me that I started a couple of years ago that is really a breakthrough for my productivity. And just because I kind of say, and I don't know what you think about this, but productivity in some aspects is a feeling.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. That's why I say it's intention plus attention. What is your intention? How are you going to pay attention to it? You put those two things together, that's productivity. Speed, efficiency, effectiveness. I mean, you could be doing the wrong things fast. You could be doing the wrong things effectively. But if it's your intention, and that's why when people say to me, like the book, The Power of Intention by Wayne Dyer, I think intention is very powerful. But without attention, it's directionless, right? It's powerless. But attention without intention is aimless. So a lot of people will pay attention to they'll go into their email inbox, which may not house any of their intentions. But because it's the thing that grabs their attention, they'll spend a lot of time there. And now they're wondering by the end of the day, look, what did I do? Like, how did the day go by? But by the same token, if you say, hey, I want to write this book, or I want to produce this podcast, or I want to close this sale, but you don't have a way of constantly being able to nurture that, pay attention to it, then it's powerless. So the big thing, and I mean, back to the journaling component, I mean, we know, like you said, go, 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 action. I mean, there's this quote by Ferris Bueller, of all people: life moves pretty fast. If you don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it. And this is not just about a way of operating at work. This should be about a way of operating altogether, because I'm not a huge believer in work-life balance. I think that it's more like work-life harmony at this point. You know, I think that we've become connected to a lot of these things. And there's the term balance to me implies that even the slightest imperfection puts you off balance, right? But a harmony is like you're looking at a table that you've set, and it's just the right amount of stuff. You start adding too many things to it, you can still actually rearrange it to make it look harmonious. So it never really gets out of balance. And a lot of people, that I think is something that you need to take into account. I don't like work-life integration either, because I think that you need to, because that indicates that they're one and the same. And I don't believe that either. I think there's got to be some harmony between them. And I think journaling and this chronicling, or the celebrating, allows you to kind of not just maybe understand it, but also embrace it a little bit more. So that way you don't feel like, oh, the day sucked, the work day sucked. But you know what? I came home from school and I got a hug from my kid. And this is the reason why I go to the office every day. And it just changes your perspective.
Yeah, it helps you to create that harmony. It's funny. We have a lot of, you said earlier before we got on that, or maybe when we were on it, you kind of might also be moving from strategist to philosopher as well.
Yeah.
And I feel that way too. It's funny because when I describe focus, I do it the same way. I say there's 3 parts, and 2 of the parts are intention and attention. So, I love chatting with you, and we could chat all day, but people are also on their way, whatever they're doing. And I want them to take away a couple nuggets and not overload or overwhelm them with too many things at once. So
yeah.
Let's tell people where they can capture more information about you, find out about your time crafting. And you said you had something on your website that people could perhaps download and get a little bit more detail.
Yeah. So, I mean, I totally appreciate the fact that there's a lot that you can take in when we start to talk about this stuff. So you can go to this URL, bookmark it, productivityist.com/takebacktime. All the stuff you need is going to be there. So that way you can go there and at your leisure and visit time and time again, and go back and listen to this episode again. If you're like, hey, you know what? I missed that, or I really need to drive this point home, because I think that, like you said, when you're trying to change your mindset, it does take some doing.
It definitely does. Or maybe they just want to come back and listen because we're so cool, right?
This is true. How often do stand-up comedians get to do an encore? Not very often. So see, that's the other reason why I do what I do now.
There you go. I love it. Well, thank you so much for being on today. You've brought a great way of thinking, and also a clear, practical process for people to be able to follow and really implement right away. So thank you so much, Mike.
Thanks so much for having me, Penny. Really appreciate it.
And thank you all for being here, because without you, we wouldn't have a show. So thanks for being here and taking away these nuggets. And my name is Penny Zenker, and you're listening to Take Back Time, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Thank you for listening. Today's topic is another opportunity for you to put the knowledge you learned into practice. Tune in again next week for more strategies that will help you have more energy and focus to get more done in less time, so you can continue to take back time.